Alrighty, we are live right now. So I'm going to wait a few minutes to see who is in the audience. I want to wait for people to come in and then we can go ahead and get started. I'm super excited for this live stream because so many people are interested in moving to Portugal and they don't realize the different avenues that they can come move to Portugal. A lot of people have heard of the D7 visa, and now we have the D8 visa, and there's also the job seeker visa, which is relatively new. So that's also an option for people to have when looking to relocate to Portugal. If you are tuning in, hey, if you're tuning in, please say your name and where you're from. I'm curious to see who's in the audience. Okay. I wonder if we got anybody from Portugal tuning in, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, the US, maybe. Okay. Nigeria in the house. We got somebody from New York and Istanbul. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to get started in a couple seconds and bring on our guest for today. I'm super excited. I know a lot of people have reached out to me about my process to Portugal. So I wanted to bring on people that can share their process because obviously it's different when you are applying from different countries, different embassies. What I've realized throughout this process is that each consulate has their own rules and standards. So it's helpful to know from multiple perspectives what might be the right path to take and what might be the right steps to take. Okay. Without further ado, I'm going to get started. My name is Cam, and I am the founder of Culture Cam, the travel, wellness, and professional development brand that helps people who are looking to travel, whether it's solo or relocate abroad, and maybe gain the professional skills in order to land a remote job. I'm also the co-founder of Black in Portugal, and I've been living in Portugal for almost 2 years now. July 10th will make it 2 years. So it's really exciting season to be in. And we have two special guests today. We have Irene. I'm going to bring her out so that she can give an introduction and tell a little bit about herself. All right, Irene, welcome.
Thank you, Cam. Thank you so much for inviting me to your show. I'm excited to be here.
Yes.
So just to introduce myself, my name is Irene Ogede. I am from Nigeria. I am currently living in Lisbon, Portugal. I have been for a few months now, and I moved with the D7 visa from Lagos. And that's the remote worker visa. So I'm currently living and working in Lisbon as a remote worker.
Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and bring our second guest, Tinashe, out to introduce himself and give a little bit of background, what brought him to Portugal.
Thanks, Cam. Hi, guys. My name is Tinashe. I'm from Zimbabwe. I hope you can all hear me well. So I came to Portugal with what's called a job seeker visa. It's where I think the name is quite straightforward. It's a visa that allows you to come to Portugal to come and look for work. So it's a 4-month visa, and after that, when you get a job, they then extend it, I think, for 2 years. So I arrived on the 1st of June, so I'm still on the job market, but definitely soon I'll be working. So yeah, that's pretty much on my side.
Awesome. So Irene, I want to start with you. I want to hear more about your story and what led you to becoming nomadic. I know you briefly mentioned that you're on the D7 visa. I'm curious to know if you've lived abroad before, and if so, where, and also what you do for work.
Okay, so I work in tech. I'm a solution architect. So essentially, what that means is that we design the solutions end to end, identifying the gaps, critiquing the technology, making sure the implementation goes smoothly. And I'm currently doing that for a project in Nigeria. So my job is in Nigeria. I have lived abroad before. I lived in England for many years. I left Nigeria as a teenager to England. So I did like A levels, my first degree work, did my master's, grad school, worked a bit more. And then I just wanted to move back to Nigeria. So I did. And then I lived in Nigeria for another stretch. So, a bit of a nomadic spirit in me. Lived in Nigeria. Which was amazing, actually. I'm really glad that I went back when I did. And yeah, I just decided that I wanted a much more fuller lifestyle. And essentially, the lifestyle I had back home wasn't sufficient. So I thought I'd move. Initially, I thought I'd move to Mexico. And after doing some research, I decided it wasn't for me. And then Portugal was next on the list. And after doing my research, really, Portugal should have been first on my list because it's just been amazing since I got here.
Nice. And how long have you been in Portugal?
I got here February 1st this year. So I am going into my 6th month.
Nice. And you came right in the middle of winter, which is kind of a tough season to start your journey in Portugal because it gets pretty cold.
Yeah.
How would you say that you're getting on with meeting new people, making friends, and acclimating to the culture?
Yeah, see, so coming from Nigeria, I do a scoping, what do they call it again? A scoping visit? What's the term? I know there's a term that
it is kind of like a scoping visit. Scouting. Yeah, scouting.
So, didn't do any of that. Just did my research. I'd never been to Portugal, never been to Lisbon. Didn't know a single person, but I did a lot of research and I felt really good about it. So I just moved and I just thought, what's the worst that can happen? If I hate it, then, I go back home and find somewhere else. I'm not a tree. I can move. But literally, from my first day, it felt like the country, or would I say the city, just gave me like a warm hug, like almost like a welcome kind of hug. And it's just been like that ever since. It's been incredibly easy to make friends. I find like when you're meeting people and your mindset and your mentality and your life viewpoint is similar, it doesn't really matter where you're from. So that has been my greatest advantage in meeting people. So I found it very easy actually to make friends.
I love that for you. I feel the same way. I came to Portugal. I didn't know not one single person. I moved sight unseen, but I find it really amazing that you can meet people so easily, whether it's on Facebook, Meetup, just on the street, wherever you go. It's super easy to make friends. And I was kind of apprehensive because I was like, it's never been this easy for me to make friends. Like the first week I got there, I made like 2 or 3 friends that I'm still friends with to this day. So I totally understand your experience because I had a very similar experience. And just wanted to know if anybody has any questions, please put Q before the question, and we'll make sure that we answer your questions towards the end. So, Tinashe, I want you to talk about your individual journey. I know you gave a little bit of background about the visa that you're on. How did you actually find out about the job seeker visa? And can you go in a little bit more depth about what the job seeker visa entails? I know that there's probably a lot of people that are curious about this visa in particular.
All right, Cam. I found out from this guy called Waka Waka Doctor. He's on YouTube. He's a Nigerian. He deals with moving abroad and stuff like that. So as someone who's lived in Nigeria and I've also lived in Bahrain and South Africa, I was looking for a place that I want to move to, which makes it easy for me to travel because I really want to travel around Europe and stuff like that. That was really the main reason. So I found that from Waka Waka Doctor. Then what I did was I went to the Portugal embassy in Zimbabwe because it was very close by to where I stay. Then they told me to go online. I'll share the link where you can do your online application. And then I did my online application, which took me about an hour or less, right? After the online application, where you just fill out your details, pretty much, they give you you choose a date that you can come for the actual interview, right? So when you choose a date which is available, then they invite you for interviews. When you go for interviews, that's when they'll ask you to bring very few documents. I'll name them. One, it's you need your passport, of course. Two, you need a police clearance. That one is very very important. The police clearance. Three, you need I think you need about 190 USD for the visa process. And also you need to have a travel insurance, which can be expensive depending on where you stay. Because I think I had to pay for about 1,500 USD, but I then found out that there are actually cheaper options that I wasn't aware, right? There were some cheap options even for like 200, 300 USD, which I didn't know about at that time. So people can choose that option. Then you also need a travel insurance, right? Your your passport. I think I've mentioned that. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. And then you go for your interviews. You just go with those documents. Oh, one more thing. You need to show that you've got somewhere to stay when you arrive in Portugal, with accommodation, and also you've your your flight reservations. Since it's a job seeker, you need a flight reservation for for 2 ways, for going and coming back, because we are not certain if you're actually going to get the job. So they need to know if you are able to then go back to your country. So you need a reservation that shows that. Yeah, and then when you arrive at the airport, you also need to show proof that you've got your return ticket. You know, that's pretty much on the job seeker visa.
Okay, so there's a lot of similarities between the job seeker visa and the D7 visa, because just like with the job seeker visa, you need to show that you have accommodation. At the time that I applied, I had to show just a one-way ticket, but there were people that had to show a return ticket. There were people that we all had to have our travel insurance. I think the requirements might be a little bit less extensive because they're giving you the space to see if you're going to get a job while you're there. I don't know if you mentioned needing a NIF, because with the D7 visa, you need a NIF, which is a tax ID number, and you need a Portuguese bank account. So those were two things that I've heard that could possibly be a difference between the D7 visa process and the job seeker visa process. But other than that, there has been a lot of overlap. So, Irene, in your opinion, what are the benefits of getting a D7 visa?
Okay, so with the D7 visa, it's renewable after 2 years. So you get it initially for 2 years. And then after 2 years, you get it renewed for another 3 years. And after the 3 years, you get permanent residency. So if you're working towards getting a Portuguese citizenship passport in the end, then after 5 years, you'll be eligible. So those are one of the benefits of the visa. And of course, you get your temporary residence card, which allows you travel throughout the whole Schengen states, which is about maybe 30 plus states, with new states being added all the time, with no restriction as to the length of how long you stay there. But of course, you can't work there, but you can travel freely. And there's some other countries as well that give you access, like Morocco, for instance. So if you have the residency card, you get you can apply for like a visa to Morocco with an e-visa instead of going through the whole visa process. So there are some benefits to having the residency card. And there's HR as well, which is non-habitual residence. So basically, if your employment or if your job or your profession, falls within the list of highly skilled employers or highly, needed professions, then you get to pay a reduced tax of 20% for 10 years. And this is whether you're working independently or working for a Portuguese employer. So I'd say those are the benefits. And then, of course, you get to live in Portugal for 5 years.
I agree. There are so many benefits to having the D7 visa, like you mentioned, the non-habitual residency being one huge thing. I would definitely recommend talking to an accountant about that because it can get a little bit tricky from personal experience trying to navigate that. But it does give you the opportunity to be taxed at a different rate, whether it's 0 or 20%. Really depends on your field that you're in. And I didn't know the thing about Morocco actually being able to apply for e-visa. But I think another cool thing that I've experienced is when I'm traveling and coming back into Europe, I'm able to go in the line with the European Union and just show them my temporary residency card. And I get through the line just a little bit quicker. So that's one of the benefits that I can see for having residency in Portugal, but also being able to work towards a goal of mine, which is to have dual citizenship. Once you have European citizenship and you're able to live in any other EU or Schengen, I would say Schengen country, without having to apply for residency. So it gives you the freedom to be elsewhere. And Portugal's passport is actually pretty strong too. So that's another added benefit. I say this even like Portugal's passport is stronger than the US's passport last time I checked. So there's a lot of added benefits. There's access to universal health care. There's a country that cares about its people. It cares about the youth. It cares about elderly folks. So I really enjoy the fact that, we're in a country that's super safe as well and values the people that live in it. And Tinashe, I'm curious, if you said that you applied for the job seeker visa, did you do it all by yourself? I know that you said that you found out about it from a YouTube channel, but if you had someone else help you through the process, who helped you? And I know you kind of already touched on what you needed in order to apply for this visa. Do you mind sharing the link with other people if there's a checklist that people can go by?
Hi, Cam. I'll definitely share the link, right? After I'll definitely share the link before we're done. And then I did the application by myself, which was very straightforward. It was very simple, actually. I think you can find someone to do it for you, but I think it's just a waste of money, honestly, because there's not really nothing complicated, right? Yeah, and then also I just want to say the benefit of actually coming on a job seeker visa is that for young individuals or fresh graduates, I think this is an opportunity for them to just to go somewhere new, without really, having issues or difficulties. And also right now with the job seeker visa, because I've realized that Germany is also giving job seeker visa, but with Portugal, Portugal doesn't ask for a master's degree or an honors degree or stuff like that. So I don't know, maybe as time goes on, those restrictions will be put there. But in the meantime, they didn't ask for that, though I put my qualifications there just to boost my chances. But from what I'm seeing, they are not asking for those qualifications. So people who don't have qualifications, I think right now, if you want to get to Europe, this might be the time, because when something gets flooded, the restrictions change. So yeah, that's pretty much that. I'll share the link now on the chat platform.
Perfect. And I totally agree with you. As things started getting flooded, the process might get more complicated. I applied twice. The first time I was denied, but the second time I applied February 2021. And the first time I applied September 2020. And even from then, the requirements changed. At first, I only needed a 6 month accommodation contract, and then I had to do a year. And then the second time I applied, I needed a Portuguese bank account. I didn't need that before. And then I also needed a NIF. So it's important that if you are interested in doing something like this, you probably should get on it before everyone else starts riding the wave, because then they might make it a little bit more complicated. You might need your master's. You might need to show a certain level of like financial security. So these are important things to note. I'm going to share the link for those who are interested in what you need for the job seeker visa. Irene, I wanted to know what all did you need to apply for the D7 visa? Because I assume you applied either at the end of 2022 or the beginning of this year, and maybe things have changed since I've applied.
Yeah, so I applied August 2022, which was really lucky because in September 2022, the Portuguese consulate in Nigeria closed, and it closed from September all the way till May. So they've really just reopened now and changed the entire process for people who want to apply for the same visa. So I know someone who applied in September just before it closed, and her passport was stuck for over 6 months. Yeah, but she's finally made it to Portugal, thankfully. And she wasn't even from Nigeria, she was from Ghana, but they were sending passports from Ghana and some other countries to Nigeria. So a lot of people got stuck, which was very stressful for them, I can imagine. So for me at the time, I had to fly from Lagos to Abuja because that's where the Portuguese consulate is. I had, like Tinashe, also come across a YouTube video of someone speaking about their experience. I just made a note of everything she said she took with her. So essentially it was so a letter from work to say I was a remote worker. You needed to be earning above the minimum wage. Now this was for the D7. So remember, the D7 was also being used for retirees. That's changed now because with the D8 digital nomad visa, the wage requirements are totally different. But at the time, for me, it was above the minimum wage, which is about 800 euros a month. You needed to have some form of accommodation. When I did ask them for some clarification, they said whatever I thought was suitable. So I got like a 4-month place. But if you get the 12-month place, great. So letter from work, a contract from work, proof of income, so banks, pay slips, bank accounts, my Nigerian bank account showing my income going in. What else? Travel insurance. And I didn't need a return ticket. I bought a one-way ticket. What else? I think that's about it. But I do have a Telegram group called Nigeria and Portugal as well, and it's sort of supporting Nigerians at the moment who are trying to apply for the various visas. So I'm very much up to date with the new requirements, and definitely one of the major requirements for the D8 is the change in income. So now you're going to need 4 times the minimum wage before you can be eligible for the D8 visa.
Yeah, I saw that, and I'm so grateful that I was able to apply before that. All these different changes, but I think the D8, I haven't heard too many people that have gotten the D8. The D7 seems to be the most successful route for digital nomads who are wanting to come to Portugal, but I think the approval rate time is a bit quicker for the D8. I'm not sure because I haven't researched it at all, really, but I'm curious to know if people are able to still apply for the D7 visa if they are a digital nomad, because I've been hearing mixed messages. So you're saying that they're not?
No. So I don't know anyone yet from Nigeria who's applied, because again, the embassy just opened and they completely changed the process, very much like Tinashe's process now, where you submit online first and then you get an appointment and then you go for your appointment. It wasn't like that for me. You just turn up at the embassy and it's first come, first served. So that's changed. But even at that, outside of Nigeria, for the people that I've heard who applied for the D7, they were switched over to the D8. And they were either approved or rejected based off their income. So either ways, you're going to be considered under the new visa requirements.
Yikes. I think one of the biggest hurdles for the D8 for people that were trying to apply for the D7 is the income requirements. But I think that you don't have to have a Portuguese bank account or a NIF, or certain things that you would need to apply for in Portugal or outsource to someone who would be able to do those things for you. So it might save you some money in that aspect, but you need to make sure that you are making enough money in order to meet the income requirements, for sure.
Yeah, because also they've changed, even within Portugal, they've changed the requirements for opening a bank account. So it's actually very difficult to open one now without a resident card, which would make it doubly harder if that was one of the requirements for your visa. So I think it's so much better now that that requirement is no longer there. And as long as you show proof, so you need to have been earning that amount for at least 3 or 4 months. It can't be a brand new job and then you apply. There needs to be some sort of history. But yeah, it's definitely better that you don't need to not only have the bank account in Portugal, but you also needed to have at least a year's minimum wage in that bank account. So without that requirement, I think it makes it a lot more simpler for people.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm curious, both of you, but Tinashe, you first. How long did your process take from start to finish? I know you're still in the process because you're looking for a job, but how long did it take you to gather those documents, apply? When did you start planning so that people can have an idea of when to get the ball rolling?
Okay, so I first did the online application. I did the online application in December. Then the closest date that I could get for an interview was January the 10th, I think. Yes, it was January the 10th. Then I went for my interview on January the 10th. Then I had to. There was a document which needed to be satisfied. The police clearance needed to be satisfied. It wasn't satisfied on that day. Then I was told to bring it back after a week. Then from January, I got the visa approval in April. Yes, I got the visa approval in April. And also, I'd forgotten to say, you need to show proof of funds in the bank for about 2,500 USD in your bank account, which has the person applying's name, to show that you can support yourself when you actually get to Portugal. I had forgotten to mention that. And you also, for the job seeker visa, you don't need a NIF. And yeah, you don't need a NIF. I actually got mine when I came here, and the queues were hectic. If there are other ways that you can get a NIF, please advise people, because that was hectic for me. So yeah, so I think my process took about 3 months for me to get the actual visa. Then yeah, then now I'm now in Portugal, you know. So hopefully soon, when I actually get a job, when I extend my stay, I'll then now start looking at you know, what I can do with my long stay and other options. Like you guys were talking about getting a full-time residency and stuff like that. I'll start thinking about that. All right.
I don't know if you mentioned, did you need a bank account in order to get the process started? Because, like Irene mentioned, a lot of banks aren't even allowing people to get bank accounts unless they have residency. So, were you just showing what you had in your personal account, or did you have to actually open a bank account in Portugal?
I was showing what I had in my Forex account, which was from Zimbabwe. It was a foreign account. It was a US dollar account, which, so I think in euros, the amount was supposed to be 2007, 2,400 euros, or if I'm not wrong, but in US dollar, the minimum account is supposed to be 2,500. So if you're applying for a job seeker visa, you show them your Forex account from the country that you're from, but it has to be a Forex account. It can't be from the local currency in that country.
Okay, that makes sense. And Irene, how long did it take you for your process from start to finish? And then I will certainly talk about how long it's taken me, or it took me. But I'm curious about you.
Mine took 4 weeks. And then they called me to tell me I got the visa, but I kept my passport with me. So I sent it back to them with a return envelope, DHL. So that took like another week for me to get my passport back. So 5 weeks in all.
Okay, did you already know where you wanted to stay? Because my process took a long time.
Where I wanted to stay in Lisbon, no. I did know that I wanted a park. I wanted greenery. I wanted, somewhere I could be outside. So literally outside my window is a huge park. So once I found that place online, I used one of the booking websites. Flatio is what I used, which was very lucky because for some reason they seem to decline Flatio with American applications, but maybe with Nigerian applications, it just, I don't know, it worked. So I used Flatio to find the place I stayed in. And yeah, I didn't know anything about the area. And again, because living in London's such a huge city, it's massive. So there's no chance of you walking from one metro station to another metro station, not unless you're in the center of London. But I thought I was still using those sort of measurements to compare with Lisbon. So when I got here and I realized how close everything was, I just realized I didn't need to overthink it so much. As long as you're close to a metro station, everywhere is close. Because literally you're walking along and it's like metro station after metro station, like 2 minutes walk, 5-minute walk. So yeah, I don't think there needs to be too much overthinking when you're coming to Lisbon. As long as you're near a station, you can get anywhere pretty quickly.
That's definitely a good point. And Val, I see your questions. We are definitely going to get to them soon. You aren't asking too many questions. I'm actually excited to dive a little bit deeper into some of the questions that you had. My experience was a little bit different. So I started my process. When I say I started my process, what I mean is I started saving money and started getting things in order to apply in March 2020, and then I applied in September 2020. But as far as like the FBI because in the US you have to get an FBI background check. Then you have to give permission to the Portuguese police to do a background check. You also have to get your FBI background check apostilled, which took additional time. And that was one of the rules that was changed. When I initially applied, it didn't need to be apostilled. It just needed to be unopened. But then by the second time I applied, it needed to be apostilled. So all in all, it took me about a year to prepare for my experience, like to move to Portugal. Because the first time that I applied, I didn't have all my ducks in a row. And I was a freelancer. So I purposely got a new job that would allow me to work remotely. And I was able to show 3 months of consistent income from one employer. So all in all, it took me about a year to get everything together. But if you have consistent income coming in, your employer's cool with you moving abroad, things of that nature, then it probably would only take you 3 to 6 months to plan your move. And at the time when I applied, I actually used Flatio. So they were allowing it for Americans then, but then they stopped. And they were also allowing booking.com at one point, and then they stopped. So things keep on evolving and they keep changing, which is why it's important to stay up to date with the latest rules or the process that they have, because what worked for me back in 2021 is not going to work for somebody in 2023, especially since I applied for the D7 and now it would have been the D8. Okay, so Val, we're definitely going to get to your questions. We just have a few more questions to get through on this side. Irene, I want to know how long you've been a nomad, because you did say that you lived abroad before, and I can't remember if you said London. I know you said England for sure, but I don't remember if London was the city. So how many years? Because you said you left when you were a teenager, correct?
Yeah, I was in England for a while. I was there for over a decade. Nigeria and England tend to have a very close relationship when it comes to schooling and education and travel. So you get a lot of Nigerians going back and forth. It's almost like how you have like Portugal and Angolans back and forth a lot. So it was very common at the time after you finish high school to go over to England for your A-levels, university, and the rest. So it was a very different experience for me there because there's so many Nigerians there. So I had so many school friends and childhood friends, and that were all from Lagos. So it was a totally different experience as to being here. It was almost like I was just at home in England, of course, with the lack of the sunshine and the food and everything else. But other than that, it felt like home. So I would say this is my first foray into being a digital nomad. The pandemic was what turned my job remote. I was actually stranded in the States for 6 months when the pandemic hit. So I had to be, I had to be remote. The project had to go remote. I would say probably one of the better things to come out of that period. So I don't know if that counts, being 6 months stuck in Virginia Beach, working 3 a.m. to meet up with the 8 a.m. meetings in Nigeria. I don't know if that counts, but after that, continued working remotely. And then, just led me up to this point. Like I realized I can't go back to the office. I don't want to go back to the office. So I figured, if I'm going to be home working, I might as well be in a different country doing the same work, So that's how this whole adventure started.
Yeah, that definitely counts. I think an important thing to note with being a digital nomad is sometimes you do have to work on different time zones. I've worked for a US company where I've had to work from 2 to 10 p.m. I've worked for a British company which has a similar time zone. So I was able to work the 9 to 5. And now I work for a Korean company. So I'm working, I'm starting at 10. So it's just, sometimes you have to adjust your schedule, but it allows you to live the life you want and be abroad in another country. And speaking of being abroad in another country, Tinashe, how are you liking Portugal so far? I know you haven't been there a long time, but how are you liking it so far?
To be honest, I'm actually loving it. Seeing people, I think people here, they mind their business. That's one good thing. And they're also very, very nice people that you do meet in general. So, I've been looking for an environment like that. It's quite different from Africa as a whole because I've lived in a lot of African countries, so I can tell you that. So yeah, I'm really liking for now. I don't have any complaints yet.
I love that. I love that. I love that you have like a smooth start to a new country because sometimes there's a learning curve and it takes you a bit of time to get acclimated. You have to meet new friends, you have to learn the ways of the land, and it can take a little bit of time. It can take a time. I've experienced that personally living in Portugal. It took me some time to acclimate, as well as living in Thailand, as well as moving to different states in the US. But ultimately, what makes it worth it is your experience with the people there, the scenery, just feeling a sense of being at home. So, like you said, people mind their business, and it's one of the safest countries in the world. So, I it sounds like a win to me. Irene, how are you liking your experience? I know that you've already mentioned it earlier, but I still want to hear more about how you're liking your experience in Portugal.
Yeah, I'm totally loving Portugal. For me, it's such a beautiful country. When I decided to move, I wanted somewhere that was beautiful, and the way I termed it was accessible beauty. So I don't necessarily want to get in my car and drive somewhere or take a bus somewhere. I literally just want to step out of my door and see somewhere beautiful. So like if you look behind where Tinashe is, just that building, if you see it in real life with the colors, you know what I mean? It's pretty. It's pretty to look at. The trees and everything. Yeah, exactly. Like he didn't even have to go anywhere. You're probably just sitting outside. So so that is like
I'm,
literally what you see everywhere in Lisbon. If you can appreciate it from the cobblestones to the colors of the building to the terracotta roofs, like it's just beauty everywhere. And like you mentioned, Cam, somewhere safe. You can walk at midnight. I see kids playing at midnight in the playground with their parents. I see ladies walking their dogs at 1 a.m. It's unbeatable. You can't get that. You can't put a price tag on that. So I'm really loving being here. And because Portugal is such a unique place, people aren't coming here for economic benefits. They're not coming here to earn a huge income and live a lavish life. They really are coming here for peace of mind and clarity and the beautiful weather and the beautiful country. So it's very easy to connect with people on that level. There's a very lack of competition amongst people, as opposed to if you were in a very capitalist, wealth-driven society. Lisbon isn't trying to be anything other than what it is. So like basically what you see is what you get. So there's a humility in it and there's an authenticity in it that I absolutely love. But one thing I will say is that if you're coming, you need to have your head screwed on straight because you will want to be outside all the time. And if you are new in your career, you might not be as focused or ambitious as much as you should be. So that's one thing I'll just say. It's a beautiful country. Everyone's having fun, and there will be that tendency for you to want to join in that. So just remember, you got to work. You have to focus on your career and do those exams and turn up and all of that. You're not on holiday. So that's what I would say.
Yes, I totally agree. For me, it was challenging because I came to Portugal during the pandemic and I had been inside. And then I'm like, oh, there's something going on every single day. People are outside. In the US, it's not that way. People wait until the weekend to have fun, until special events to go out. But in Portugal, people are out just because they're living life. It doesn't matter if it's Monday afternoon Thursday night. There's always something going on and people outside. I remember going to the grocery store and I'm like, don't people have to work? Why are people just out and about midday? But I love it because as someone who's a digital nomad, it gives you like freedom and flexibility to kind of interact with people at different times of the day, different days of the week. And it's something that I really enjoy. So let's get into some of these questions. Val asked, I think we already covered this a bit, but how long is the D7 visa valid for and what are the requirements? I thought they were discontinuing the D7 and replacing it with the digital nomad visa, lasting for 1 year and requiring an income of approximately $2,800 per month. Irene, could you answer this question?
Yes, Val, you're correct. They are discontinuing the D7 for remote work. So if you're a remote worker, then yes, you wouldn't use the D7 to apply. You would use the digital nomad visa, which people call D8, but I've learned that's an unofficial name. Oops. Can you hear me, Cam? Sorry, I thought I lost.
Yes.
Okay, yes. But if you are retired or if you have passive income, then you are still eligible for the D7 visa.
Yes. So if you have investments and or you're getting royalties or you're getting dividends or anything like that, that would fall into the category of the passive income visa. But yes, if you're a remote worker, you're either going to apply for the D8 digital nomad visa or the D2 visa, which is, I don't know the proper title for it, but for freelancers or people that have businesses, they can apply for the D2 visa. And it just really depends. There's different requirements, but if you work for a company and you're an employee, then definitely apply for the digital nomad visa. All right, Tinashe, I'm curious if you've had any challenges that you faced when you were applying for your visa or even getting to Portugal.
The only challenge that I can say I faced was the housing challenge, like for my visa, because at first I think I used a hotel reservation, but then because the visa delayed, that reservation got cancelled. Yeah, in between, so they asked me for a new reservation. I used Flatio, and then they accepted. But when you get here, uh, getting accommodation is not so easy from what I've seen so far. So yeah, and actually, I don't know. I think I heard Irene saying she stays in Almeida. I'm actually in Almeida. That's where I was like when the call started. So I don't know. Maybe I'm actually in front of the park that you're talking about. You know.
Yeah, you're literally outside. I thought it looked familiar.
Yeah.
That's lovely. I actually used to live in that area. I've moved 4 times since I've lived in Lisbon for 2 years. I lived in Alameda. I lived in, Anjos, which is right next to Alameda, and Ahoyish, which is all part of the Ahoyish parish. And then I lived in Alfama, which I would not recommend. It's a very old part of town. The apartments are tiny, and there was problems with mold. And now I live in Camp de Rique, which for me is perfect. It's a lot flatter, and there's a lot of families, and I enjoy like the slower pace. But if I need to go out and about, it's not that far from wherever I need to go. I see that Val asked another question specifically for me. Am I saying that I got the D7? Okay. They will continue to ask you to meet the D7 requirements and not the new D8 requirements. So initially when I applied was for the D7, but it I got residency now. So I believe that I'm not really on a visa technically because I have residency. I'm not, the visa is only valid for 4 months. And in that 4 months, you have to transfer it into residency. However, I am curious because my 2 years is up in October and I have to renew my residency for another 3 years. And then after that, it'll turn into permanent residency if I decide to stay. But yeah, I'm curious to see what that process will be like. But if you got the D7 visa, it's still valid until you get your residency. And then after that, you're not really on a visa, if that makes sense. I hope it does.
Just to add to that, because I got my visa on the D7 I got the D7 visa essentially, but by the time I had my second appointment, there was a D8 visa. And regarding my bank account information, when I did ask them how much I needed to show in the bank account, they said it just needed to be above the minimum wage, which is going back to the basic requirements that the D7s and everybody else has. So I think ultimately, once you're in here and you get the visa and you know, it would go back to the minimum wage requirements. That's what I believe.
Okay, yes, so that makes a lot of sense. And pretty much after, I think the hardest part of the process is actually applying for the visa. But once you have your SEF appointment to apply for your residency, it's pretty straightforward. You just need a few more documents. But by that point, I don't want to say it's a shoo-in, but you're pretty much going to get residency if you had all the things that you needed to get your visa in the first place. And Val, to answer your question about what apostille means, so you can get things notarized. An apostille is the highest level of something being notarized, I guess. I can't think of another word, but it's the highest level of authentication. So you send it in and you send it to like a government office and they have to stamp it to show that it's valid, that it really is you and your FBI clearance. I'm not sure if people from other countries need equivalent to that, but I am curious from both of you if you need something equivalent to FBI clearance for your visa process.
For my side, it was a police clearance, which needs to be certified by the authorities in my country. Then it gets sent to Portugal.
Same. It's a police clearance certificate that you need to have from the country you're resident in. So even if you're a Nigerian, you're living in another country and you've only been there for a couple of months, then you wouldn't be able to get the police clearance from there. You would need to have been resident there for 12 months.
That's a great point. And to answer your question about the authenticate and legalize any documents, for me, the only thing that I needed to authenticate was my apostille as well as my passport photos, because at the time I applied, they were doing mail-in applications, and now they're not taking any mail-in applications. So those are the only two things that I know that I needed to get authenticated or notarized or apostilled. Did you have to do that at all for Nigeria or Zimbabwe?
For Nigeria, the only thing I needed to get authenticated was the police clearance certificate. So you get the original certificate from the Ministry of Police, but then you have to still get it authenticated at the Ministry of, I think it was Foreign Affairs, I think it was. Yeah, so that was the only thing. But then because I was coming solo, but if you're married, if you have kids, then you would have to get all those authenticated as well. If you're coming as a student, probably you have to get those certifications authenticated too. So for couples who are coming on a D7 or trying to do what's the word? What's that thing when they bring the families together again?
Reunification.
Yes, family reunification. Yes. So for all those to show proof of union, proof of proof that's your child and all that, you would need to get all birth certificates, marriage certificates, and the rest authenticated.
From my side, I had to authenticate the police clearance as well. Yeah, that's the only thing I had to authenticate from my side. Oh yeah, and actually I had forgotten to mention with the job seeker visa, after you get the visa, when you come in you get a job, you're also allowed, after you get a job, you're actually allowed to bring any family members. So that's another advantage. After you get a job, you can actually like apply for if you have a wife, you know, a spousal visa for them to come and join you. So that's a very good one for people who want to immigrate with their families.
That's really good to know, because reunification is definitely a route that a lot of people go. Maybe if they're married and one of the spouses has more income, it might be stronger. It might make a stronger application if they apply. So that's also an important thing to note. Is reunification is an option if you are married or if you have children and you're wanting to bring your children abroad with you. If anybody has any questions, we are going to be wrapping up soon. I do have a few more questions that I want to ask both of you. What challenges did you both face when you arrived to Portugal? Because there is, like I said, a learning curve. I know that you both love it, but has there been any challenges that you faced once you actually got to Portugal?
For my side, it's the language barrier. You know, you don't really find a lot of people who speak English. But the good part is that even though people don't speak English, people do try to actually help the best they can. And also, the other good part is that the group Black in Portugal has been really helpful to me because sometimes when I don't know, like I didn't know how to go about the NIF document, I just went into the Facebook and I typed, guys, how do I go about the NIF document? And somebody helped me. So the group has been very, very helpful, you know. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I'll second that. I'd say it's the language. It's a difficult language to learn. And also because I thought I was going to move to Mexico first, I was learning Spanish first. And apparently that's like the worst thing you can do because the pronunciations are completely different. So you see the word spelled out and you're thinking in Spanish, but Portuguese is opposite. So if you're thinking of Portugal, forget your Spanish. I'd say that.
I totally agree. And actually, when I speak Portuguese, a lot of people say I sound like I'm speaking Spanish because I learned Spanish in high school and college. So it makes it difficult because they're very similar, maybe not in pronunciation, but in spelling of things. So I'm able to read Portuguese and maybe write some things, but understanding it is difficult. And then speaking it has been difficult as well. If either one of you had to do it all over again, like applying again, moving to the process of moving to Portugal, what would you do differently?
I would save more money. That's one thing I would do differently.
Honestly, I can't really think of anything that I would change. I think maybe not come in the dead of winter. That's maybe the only thing. That was a bit of a shock because inside the houses are colder than outside. So, I'm indoors hugging the heater, just thinking, what am I doing? And then you go outside and it's a lot milder. That took some time to get used to. So I'll probably say, come from March. That's the only thing.
I would probably if I had to do it all over again, slow down. It felt like I brought a lot of my American energy where I felt like I had to figure things out quickly. And in the first 7 months of me living in Portugal, I moved 4 times, and I was putting a lot of unnecessary stress on myself. And it's already difficult to move abroad. You know, you have to give yourself time to acclimate to the culture, to meet new people, to just understand the culture a little bit more. So I would slow down a bit and just give myself time and space to really get to know Portugal and fall in love with Portugal because I moved sight unseen. All right. So it looks like we have one last question. I heard that some of the locals are annoyed by the influx of foreigners residing in the country, maybe because foreigners are driving up the cost of living. Do you think they're making the process of residency more difficult to limit the number of the foreign residents? What are both of your thoughts on this?
I wouldn't say the process is difficult. I think the process is very straightforward. And from what I've seen, if you meet all the requirements, you will get the visa. And that's saying a lot because there are a lot of places where you will meet all the requirements, but you still won't get the visa. So I find the process to be very equitable. You meet the requirements, you get the visa. Yes, there are a lot of foreigners coming in, and I don't know if they're responsible for driving up the prices because I don't think the foreigners are the landlords, if you know what I mean. So it seems someone's benefiting somewhere, and I definitely don't think it's the foreigners who want to pay higher prices. But either ways, I just think you have to decide, you have to come to a conclusion if it's worth it for you. What are the benefits you're getting that you can't get elsewhere? And is it worth it in the long term? And I think that is what would help you make the decision. But again, Portugal is not Lisbon. Like I tell a lot of people, everywhere has merit. Everywhere is beautiful. Everywhere is scenic. You don't have to be in the center if you can't afford to be in the center. There's so many other towns. And the country's not big. It's 5.5 hours driving from end to end. So you can get around if you have to. You don't have to be in the center. So just find what is affordable to you and suits your lifestyle, and you will be happy.
Yeah, I really agree with what Irene said. I really agree with what she said because when I was doing my research, honestly, I didn't know that accommodation was this expensive. But like Irene said, it's just a matter of you finding where you can afford and then moving there because people are different, you know. So yeah, that's all I have to say on that.
Yeah, I think that Portugal did offer a lot of perks to moving, and the economy is booming in a lot of ways because of tourism and foreigners, but it's also making it difficult for a lot of locals who aren't able to get pay increases and might have to move further out. It's a form of gentrification which happens worldwide, unfortunately. And I do think that the process for residency doesn't necessarily have to do with the people residing in the country, but more so just because if a lot of people are trying to do something, it might just get progressively more challenging because they're not going to be able to let everybody in that applies. But now that Portugal has become a hotspot, they have to be more mindful about the people that they let into. Well, I won't say more mindful about the people that they let into the country, but maybe a little bit more selective. This concludes the live. I want to know where people can find both of you if they're wanting to connect or ask any questions regarding your visa process or just see what you're up to on social media. So where can they find you, Irene?
Okay, so I'm on Instagram with the handle Niger in Portugal. So there I'm just basically showing what it's like living here as a Nigerian in Portugal. I know for Nigerians, there's a bit of hesitancy moving to countries where the language is not English. So just to basically show that it's possible and you can still come here, make friends, thrive, have a good life, and yeah. So that's where you find me. And then if you click the link in the bio, you'll also find a link to the Telegram. So if you're in Nigeria or you're African even, and you just want some information on how the process works there, then you can come into the Telegram group and ask your questions, information. It's got a lot of people on ground, so you probably get the most up-to-date information there. So yeah, that's how you find me.
Nice. And let's see. Tinashe, how can people find you?
Hi guys, sorry I logged out by mistake. You can find me on Instagram. I just typed my Instagram so that you share, but my Instagram name is Tintin_heart. You can get me on that Instagram. I'm also on Facebook. My Facebook is Tinashe Moyo, but in Zimbabwe there are a lot of Tinashe Moyo, so just try get me on Instagram. That one will be easier.
Perfect. Thank you both so much for taking time out of your Sunday to do this live. It was very insightful, and I know a lot of people are looking forward to applying. So thank you both so much.
Thank you, Cam, for the invite. It was really fun, and I hope the information has been useful to someone out there. But yeah, they can reach out anytime. The more the merrier.
Perfect. All right. Ciao.